Hello everybody and welcome back or welcome to the channel for the first time, where today we're going to be talking of Lies and Rain on PSVR2. Now I've got to be fully upfront here. There have been so many games coming out and so many keys, so much I can and so much I can't talk about in terms of things that I've been playing that I've just been so swamped I haven't finished the game. But I have played about 5.5 hours. The game tells me I'm about 65% way through the story, and I want to give you my impressions so far, which overall are pretty damn positive. I'll follow this video up with a pinned comment over the next few days when I do finish the game, kind of echoing my final thoughts, but I can't really see my opinion changing too much because the game fundamentally is very similar all the way through so far. So unless there's some drastic change, which I doubt for a team of 5 people to pull off who made this game, then I think I'll be pretty cemented in what I say here, but of course I'll update you if that changes. Before we get into this, we've got to thank our patrons and members who are all on screen right now, and let's talk my impressions of Lies and Rain on PSVR2. Lies and Rain takes place in a desolate future. A nuclear holocaust has gone off, and AI has taken over the world, and essentially you're stranded in the overground while the rest of humanity is underground, trying to figure out your way through this Half-Life meets the Matrix sort of reality that now exists, unfortunately, on Earth. You play as Adam, who is a person who can interact with digital environments. You can head into digital spaces throughout the game, and it's your job to go and stop the AI, basically, and return the world to a state of somewhat normality. Now, before we get into the actual features of the game and what I liked and some of the things which I didn't quite like, let's talk the PSVR2 port itself. And first of all, on this front, I've got to say well done to Costello. These are the devs behind this game, and they've done something which I don't really see very often with PSVR2 games, and that is a big options menu for adjusting graphical settings. You've got different anti-aliasing methods, performance and quality mode, which you can swap between on the fly. I went with performance, which sits at 90Hz, I believe potentially 120 on the Pro, but I don't have a Pro, so I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it is, along with turning foveated rendering on, off, and having it fixed, which lets you see how much horsepower that really frees up on PSVR2, which is great to see. No idea why you turn it off, but they've kept that option in there if you do want to experiment with that, which is cool. So massive thank you to them for actually including this. It's something that Arcanage did at the start of the year, and it immediately made that game stand out. Lies and Rain does it too. Head haptics and controller haptics are utilised along with adaptive triggers for guns, and they're all utilised very well. Everything that you'd really expect to trigger head haptics like damage, falls, etc. do. And as we expect now, each gun has adaptive triggers, and they feel great as always. The game's quality mode also runs reprojected. It does look a bit better in the still image, but to be honest, I'd say go with performance, because the 90Hz performance feels buttery smooth here. Okay, so tackling the actual game itself, it runs for about 8 to 10 hours from what they said. I think I'll be aiming for about 8 with my current pace. And it's a very slow, methodical game. If you're looking for something fast, like Reach, or something paced fairly quickly, like a Behemoth, I would say, even though there's a lot of build-up in that game, it's constant combat encounters, and the puzzles are fairly fast. Lies and Rain has a slower pace than all of these. It has a more consistent pace, though, where Reach kind of slowed down with the puzzles and did kind of grate a little bit as time went on. Lies and Rain is consistent enough that you kind of get settled into the flow of the game, and it's not stopping and starting and kind of throwing a spanner into the works there. But the loop is essentially you'll go into an area, there'll be some enemies, you'll kill them, you'll solve a puzzle, you'll continue, you'll get more upgrades. The game has an upgrade system like Half-Life Alyx. I'm going to be making a lot of Alyx comparisons here, because you find this game's equivalent of resin, which are called GPUs. You find these around the map, and it encourages exploration and breaking open crates, just like Half-Life. And then you go to stations and you upgrade different things like weapon mods, health mods, respirators, etc. And then that helps you as you progress throughout the game. Now, I say that this reminds me of Half-Life Alyx as if that's a bad thing, but it really isn't. If Lies and Rain had these mechanics going for it but did nothing else good, then I'd say that it's a bit of a poor imitation, but it does actually own these mechanics, and they do feel familiar because they have been in previous VR games, but they fit and feel settled in the world here at least. The scope of Lies and Rain is pretty big as well. It opens with quite a large set piece, and as you can see with its runtime, it tries to go for a fully fledged story, and I'd say it succeeds with that, at least so far. The writing is a bit on the nose in certain point, with Kojima-style dialogue from the early Metal Gear Solid games, where someone will say a line and introduce a new piece of information, and the main character will just repeat that back to them in a more questionable tone, if that makes sense. But overall, the writing for a team of 5 is actually better than I expected it to be, and the world building is pretty good here. As you progress through the game and explore your environment, you'll find data pads which will reveal stories of people who survived throughout the nuclear holocaust and against ADE, which is the AI network. Unfortunately, these are only data pads that you read off. I wish that we had a bit of voice acting there, but again, small team, I understand. But it does get a little bit boring having to stop and read through all these data pads, because they are genuinely interesting, but that is one thing that does kill the pace a bit, is sitting there and reading through, because there is no other alternative. The 2 characters that primarily speak throughout the game as well, Adam and Sam being on the radio to you throughout the game, do reveal facts about the world and give you lore through that, but I'd say the real crux of it and where the good stuff lies are in these data cards that you find, but again, you will have to stop and read them. Lies and Rain is ambitious though, but you can see where the devs are kind of stretched out further than they can really go, at least so far. While it opens big, the game files you into smaller corridors before long, and while it does open into larger sections from time to time, you are traversing through environments very reminiscent of Metro, for example, with how they look and feel. These devs obviously didn't have all the resources in the world, but they did what they can, and when the game does open up, these environments do genuinely look very good. Now the game runs parallel. You go through the real world and then you can also jump into the data world, which is kind of the gimmick of your main character. This offers you the power to jump between different platforms, and essentially your objective in the data world is to get to the end of the level and take out some enemies. It is pretty much the same thing every time when you go into the data world, but they're put in sporadically so they feel fresh after you spent, 30 minutes or so in the real world. If I had to compare these sections to something, I'd say they feel a bit like the platforming in System Critical 2, which is a bit of a niche indie game, but if you played that, you'll probably see the similarities here. But these most of the time are mandatory and allow you to progress, and you can also get health and GPU upgrades throughout these levels, so they aren't just there for padding. Your gameplay in the overworld, though, is a bit more grounded. You're looking for resources all the time, just like in Half-Life Alyx, whether it be ammo or GPUs, stims, grenades, respirators which are needed for going on the surface, and face masks which are needed to go through clouds of fog, and these add a few different survival style elements throughout the campaign which I did genuinely enjoy. The 3 weapons you get are the pistol, shotgun and SMG. The shotgun is my favourite, I would say. It really packs a punch, and again you can upgrade these using your GPUs at upgrade stations around the game. These are your standard scopes, extended mags, laser pointers, all that sort of stuff. So it does give you a reason to explore and find these GPUs and put them towards your upgrades. The game would be a bit boring though without enemies to fire these weapons at, and luckily it has a fairly decent sized roster, I would say, and these are fairly Half-Life inspired too. You've got your small head crab style spider bots. They jump at your face and actually latch on, just like head crabs. You don't have your normal zombie types, but you do have floating sentinels that follow you around, a little scorpion creature that flings grenades at you, and lasers to dodge throughout the game. I enjoyed the enemy encounters as they do make you think, although I've got to say the lasers were a bit overused. I'd get to a climbing session where you'd have to kind of duck and weave between these lasers, and luckily there's no body IK, so it's just avoiding with your head. But it did get a little bit old when a lot of these climbing sessions did have these lasers that would kill you in a couple of hits, and a little bit more variety there would have helped. The game does feature a fair bit of climbing. It's very easy to see where you are able and not able to climb, and I will say that I did struggle a little bit with this. I'm a player who likes to climb a bit faster. I like to throw myself around in Horizon, Reach, Behemoth, and utilize the game's physics to my advantage, but you can't really do that here in Lies and Rain, which does make sense because the game's pace is slower. I don't really know how to pinpoint it, but just something felt a little bit off when trying to climb a bit faster or drop down and grab a ledge, for example. I would end up falling and dying a lot of the time, which was a bit frustrating, but again, it's probably just my playstyle is that I like to climb faster and utilize those physics, and that's not really an option here because of the game's pace. The movement in the data world though is great, with a gravity glove basically on your left hand to power yourself along, where you can boost twice and 3 times with an upgrade to fling yourself around the map. That felt great. Before we get onto a couple of things which I didn't quite like, I do want to mention as well the VRAF interactions. There's basically a ton of objects around the game that can be interacted with. If it looks like it's interactable, it usually is, whether it's a box to smash or a wall of glass that you can break and then also move the pieces around when they're on the floor. This is one of the best feeling VR games in terms of VRAF interactions from moment to moment that I've played in a long time, and it really is a testament to the small team that's made it that it feels this good. Right, that being said, VRF interactions like this do cause some jank, and it only happens maybe 1% of the time, but when it is that 1%, it feels so noticeable. Whether it's an object that doesn't go where you expect it to, or a bunch of items blocking your path that just don't really feel like they're working in conjunction with the physics properly. When it goes wrong, but that's not often, but again, when it does happen, you really do feel it. I will say as well, I did feel a little bit constricted by the overworld rules where you have to kind of put on your respirator or use an inhaler. It basically starts a timer when you're above ground in certain areas where this toxic rainfall is hitting you, or if you're in a toxic cloud where you've got to be using these metro style respirators. And also very similarly in the Twilight Zone VR there was a similar mechanic, but it essentially forces you to manage your time up there, and it does create tension, but it also made me power through sections that I would have quite liked to explore, if that makes sense, and after a while it did feel a bit unnecessary with the timer there. I understand the reasoning, but it didn't quite work in adding tension for me. It just felt like a bit of an annoyance when I'd like to explore and spend more time in these areas where they are necessary, because that's usually when the game opens up into larger outdoor vistas. I did have a couple of physics bugs as well where I got on an elevator and basically had to dodge some lasers, so I pressed down on the right stick to see if I could kind of like lie down and make it easier to get past them, but instead I phased through the floor. That's the only real proper issue or bug that I've had with the game so far though, and I remember saying in the demo that I ran into a couple of physics-based bugs and one where I even fell through the map, but I've got to say, in my 5 or so hours of playtime so far, that's the only issue that I've run into that is a fundamental bug in the game, so they've done a great job QA testing the rest of it. I do want to touch on visuals as well as my final, not negative, but kind of mixed point. The game is quite uneven where the priorities have gone and the resources have gone, which again is completely fair with the team size and the budget size, but I just want to temper expectations. This is not a AAA looking campaign all the way through. There are some vistas which look fantastic and some where you'll be stuck in a dark corridor for quite a while without a flashlight as well. So some of these areas are quite hard to see in, especially when trying to acquire targets at distance and shoot them, which I did find a bit frustrating. It can also make the puzzling a little bit confusing because the game doesn't really hold your hand in any way. It kind of just lets you figure out how you solve the puzzles. There's no helpers there, no hints. And when a lot of the game does look the same all the way through, at least so far, I did find myself getting stuck a few times because everything just looked quite visually similar. I will say though that the areas where they put the most work into, you spend the most time in. So if you get to an area that is quite big and has a lot of detail packed into it, chances are you're going to be spending say 20 or so minutes there, whereas the less detailed places you'll be breezing by in just a few minutes. So the devs kind of knew where their priorities were there. The sound design as well is pretty solid. Enemy cues are easy to read in terms of when they've locked onto you and when they're attacking, and weapons sound punchy enough, and the atmosphere of the world does seep in nicely through your headphones or surround sound system. Overall, I've enjoyed my time with the Lies Rain so far. Again, I'll update in the comments when I've finished it. Let me know what you think of it. Are you looking forward to this slightly slower paced sci-fi adventure? Is it what you expected? I personally would still recommend it. I don't really have a number I'm sitting on at the moment in terms of rating it. You guys know I don't really do that here, but I'm definitely enjoying it despite a couple of frustrations here and there. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.